Olom.
Yeah?
Rectifying the world as viewed by Chassidus. Okay.
It's Hananiah's birthday today. We got him a birthday cake. I hope he shows up.
He said he was going to try.
Yeah. What was that? Okay, sorry. Give me a second. Stop the camera. I really should have put on the other one. Now I realize. I should have put on the other one.
Hi.
And put a
Sorry
clock
for the
there.
late start.
Oh.
We are
See,
meeting
that's the
together.
problem.
Oh my god, I didn't even notice.
I know, so sad.
Oh, they're
Should
all
have
up.
on the other wall.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah.
what, this over here?
I just did it myself. No, on the other wall by the couch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna put up other photos there.
What's
That's
gonna be
fine.
here? Like another buffet or something?
No,
You
there's
can't really
gonna be
put
a
the bench
bench.
against that wall.
You
People
can.
can't really sit against it because.
Yeah, they can. It's a low bench.
Yeah,
Oh.
now you're gonna be back to the photos.
It's fine. Okay.
Oh,
Going
it's
live.
so beautiful.
Just put them up today. You could always take them down and redo it. You did that whole wall.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Tikun Olom. You weren't here last week, so we have to spend an hour talking about what we talked about now. We'll spend
Okay.
5 minutes.
Alright.
Give me a second. Oh, I have to get the mic.
5 minutes. Esther, tell me when you're ready.
We are live, but I'm getting the mic. You can start. It'll just be low on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook.
No, wait, no.
Okay, so just wait. I might have to
Yep.
fix the mic situation. I'm not even sure.
We'll move this a little to the side.
This over.
I do.
Let's hope.
Okay.
Good. Let's see which mic we're using here.
Guys, sorry, we're just setting up a little bit. We'll start in a minute or two. Where is this? I mean the live, where we are live, real live. We're at Rutland Road at the home of our host,
Oh, I can't do it. I have to end the
Esther.
video.
Freeman,
Sorry.
and family. That's where we are. That's where the class is right now, and as it's Hashem, that's where it meets every week. People are asking,
Give
where's the
wasabi?
Huh?
Give wasabi with the sushi.
We're just waiting for a little bit more setup.
Sorry.
Yep. So the class right now is on Rutland Road in Crown Heights. There's a lot of activity on this street. Your park is picking up this summer,
Yeah.
this summer stuff. This is new too, isn't it? Am I seeing things?
Well,
This whole shelf
Mhm.
setup here in the kitchen, the island.
It's new.
It's new.
The table's new.
Yeah, that's what I
The
thought.
island's new.
The color of the
Pictures
wall is
and
new.
Oh, yeah.
rectifying the world as.
as viewed by Chassidus.
Okay. Almost done.
Rectifying the world as viewed by Chassidus.
There we go. Going live.
Here, lady, here. The Lord, Tikun.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
There you go.
Okay, just a quick review. And for those who weren't here last time, a quick entry point. Tikun Olom. We've called it rectifying the world.
Okay, now it's live.
An hour left? Okay.
Yeah.
We called it rectifying the world, that's English, because that's one of the meanings of tikkun, to fix. But what we explained here is that the origin of this expression, which originated first in our liturgy in about 560 years before the Common Era, was L'sakan Olam Malchus Shatai, which we say every day in Aleinu, to arrange the world according to the way the king wants it to be arranged. So even though the world was broken then, as it is now, the cure, God always grants the cure before the disease. And what's the cure? The cure is called, what Pasuk Eliyahu calls, Eser Tikunim. There are 10 Tikunim. So now we fast forward to the time in the beginning of the Common Era when the Tanoim and the Amoraim, when the Tanoim are setting forth the Gemara, and we have Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and in the Zohar, the word Tikun means that he arranged 10 Tikunim, which we call the 10 Sephiros. So that's where we get the notion that the tikkunim is not necessarily to fix, but to arrange. There's a very particular arrangement in the entirety of the cosmos, which is Esher Tikkunim, which is 10 spheros. And one of the meanings of spheros, which the Alter Rebbe tells us in a mimer on Spheros HaOmer, Sphero means to shine. So there's a light which is designed to be shining in the world. That's called the Sephiros, or the Tikkunim. And we live in a world where the light doesn't shine. And we live in a world, especially today, where there's very little light shining, and a lot of what we could call brokenness. And so it is appropriate to speak about this as the rectification, but what we're learning is really how to order the world correctly, how we can be partners in rectifying and ordering the world. It's interesting, Esther, you noted last time that this minor we're learning is in Parshas Noach. Well, Parshas Noach is where we're relevant to rectifying or arranging the world, because the Rebbe will tell us in the Sifas that we'll start learning next week how critical it is that the Bnei Noach, the children of Noach, first learn and internalize and perform the mitzvahs that they have been commanded to do in the Torah.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's just pure hashgacha pratis. I happen to pick this minor because the subject matter was relevant and important to us, but it happens to be in Parshas Noach. Okay, so I think that's sufficient. We're going to pick up. Ideally, we're going to do two things tonight. We're going to finish off the minor that we started last week in Parshas Noach from the Alter Rebbe. And we're going to delve a little bit, I don't know how much, hopefully, into a mimer from Ayin Beis, Tofresh Ayin Beis of the Rabbi Rashab, on the subject of Tikun Olom and the covenant of Noach. So for those who are looking inside, we're starting on page 20, and you see in the right-hand margin there's a little star. While you're getting the place, so Miriam has a question about what is being discussed. Now, tell me if I haven't answered that question, just ask it again. And about something, how do I ask a question? You tell me, guys who do guys in Facebook, how do you ask a question? How do you raise a Facebook question?
How do you raise a Facebook
Yeah,
question?
how do you get it up on the screen? She wants to know, how do I ask a question in Facebook?
Oh,
Like to go
The
live
person
with
is-
you?
No, she's there.
Let her type it.
So she's typing it just like you're typing it now. There's no particular question box, right? There's no particular place for questions, okay? Okay, and Sarah did answer, actually. So just ask here and it'll be answered soon. Okay, fine. So, we're going now rolling out from the perspective that what we're discussing is how the world is arranged correctly, according to Sefer Yetzirah, which speaks about the Eser Tikkunim. Hashem brought out Eser Tikkunim, 10 fixings or arrangements. Another way that we talked about it last week is like a person fixes himself up, puts on a nice shirt, puts on a nice blouse, whatever it is. You fix up yourself. Not because you're broken, but you're just making a particular appearance. So God makes a particular appearance in these 10 spheros. Now our custom at this class is we first ask if anyone around the table would like to begin reading. And if so, we'll let that person read. Without any pressure. Anybody?
I think it's Josh
What
tonight.
Yeah, I think so.
No.
Yes,
No?
it is.
I can't pick up where
You,
I picked
Wait,
up.
you tapped out both classes. Actually, you weren't there last class.
Is this mic picking up everyone?
Yes.
There,
Okay, so-
I was watching.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Come on, lady.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I'll be the closer tonight.
All right,
Okay.
You'll be the closer.
let me start. I'll just get in the flow.
Okay,
A
go for
little
it.
bit will get in the flow, okay?
Where?
So the world is arranged in the following manner. Well, we know there are 10 tikkunim. These 10 tikkunim flow out from God's essence in stages. And we talked about these two stages. These two stages in the language of Kabbalah are called akudim, nikudim, and berudim. Akudim is the place where nothing has any differentiation whatsoever. The metaphor we used last week is like sugar in solution, where you can't see any of the sugar whatsoever, but it's there. You just can't see it. And so as these 10 spheres originate in God's essence, they originate in God's will. And then he brings them forth. And the first bringing forth, he brings them forth as nekudim, as points. Points is the world of Tohu. Everything is powerful, but separate. And then the next stage is called Brudim, where all of the diversity which had been separate from each other comes together, retaining the power, but giving at the same time, giving themselves over so they inter-include each other. And the metaphor that Chassidus gives a lot for this is the metaphor of the human body, where every organ is an akuda, is a point. The eye should see, it shouldn't speak. The mouth should speak, it shouldn't hear. Every point has its particular power. And yet, every organ doesn't argue with each other about which is more important, which should be more socially acceptable, recognized, to supreme, at the top of the heap. They all act together. So these three things are akudim, nekudim, and brudim, three stages of revelation of the Eser Tikkunim, the 10 things with which God arranges the world. Interesting, the phone rang. I was just gonna, anybody have a question? Anybody out there have a question? That's the starting point. Okay, so we're beginning near, if you have the text on page 20, okay, the line begins, V'loche nikraim b'shem eser spiris haganuzos. In the place which is like this sugar solution, where there is sugar, but you can't see any grain individual, that's the place that the Kabbalah calls the 10 hidden spiros. And this will be understood according to what is written.
Happy birthday.
It's written as follows.
Rabbi Kamen.
Yes, Hananya.
It is Hanani's birthday tonight.
It's Hananya's birthday.
Yes, so we're going to embarrass you. Happy birthday!
Okay, well, put the birthday. Oh, everybody can see. Can you bring it over here so people on this side can see it as
Yeah,
well?
for sure.
Thank you.
Hanani Steinmetz's birthday. This is what we do to people who come to the shiur.
Oh my gosh.
It's very pretty in pink for Hanania.
His
Lots of
favorite
fun.
colors,
Lots
pink
of
and
fun.
Thank you.
brown.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for the persons who, people who have
There you
asked,
go.
where's the shiur?
Sure.
It would be lovely to have more people here at the shiur, because as I hope you'll see tonight as it unfolds, there's a lot of discussion, and I'm not sure how much of it comes through in the Facebook experience, but it's a rich discussion pretty usually. Wonderful, nice.
Okay.
So,
Candles.
for Hananya, in honor of Hananya, we'll repeat in 1 second what we're talking about. It's advertised as the Tikun Olom, fixing the world. But we're going to meanings of Tikun that have nothing to do yet with fixing. Before the world was broken, Hashem created it in a very precise arrangement. And Tikun also means to arrange. As we said in Chosek Eliyahu from the Zohar, that he arranged the world, he was mafik, he expressed himself with Eser Tikkunim, with 10 arrangements. And these are the Sephiros. Now these Sephiros exist in 3 general levels. The deepest one, where they're not differentiated at all, they're there in God's potential, in his power, is called Eser Spiros Haganuzos. And that's where we're holding page 20, if you're looking at it on the star. Where the Spiros exist, where they have no differentiation whatsoever. And when I say Spira, think arrangement. The potential that the world should be arranged in a particular way. That will for that rutzon, that will for that, originates in a place which we call the 10 hidden spiros, because they're not differentiated. And for Nanya's sake, I'll just bring up once more the mushal of sugar in a solution. It's there, but not touchable, not visible. The spiros have no metzius, the word. They have no physical metzius. They have no separate existence on their own. The human Alderek Moshel, now we'll understand this by way of an example.
What?
The powers of the soul. Which are enclosed in the limbs of the body. Each power has a particular function. As I said earlier, the eye to see, the ear to hear, the ear to hear. It has a certain power, and that certain power is invested in a particular organ. The power to see in the eye, in the eisen, v'koich hamasa b'yadayim, and the power to do things with your hands. V'kein b'koich elyonim. Similarly, since we are a reflection of Him, we are made in His image. Everything that occurs down here is a projection of what's going on up above. So God Himself, nothing can be down here if it's not up there. So similarly upstairs, that means in godliness. There's upstairs, mahen koyach hasechel, there's something which is, there's a koyach of intellect, just as there is in a person, and that's in the brain. The koyach hamidos, and the power of midos is in the heart. So we have a brain and a heart. He has a brain and a heart. The brain of God, in general, corresponds to Chabad, the three spheros which are called Chokmah, Bina, Das, those three tikunim, those three arrangements. And the heart generally corresponds to Hesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes, and particularly Tiferes, the heart. So in a person, back to the mashal, there's one soul in a person. There aren't many souls in the person, but if you were somehow to be able to do a physical exploration of the body and get to see the soul, which is not physically visible, if you looked at it, you wouldn't see any differentiation. There's one soul, and that soul spreads out into the body, that singular soul. Shehi etzem echad, it's one essence, similar to God. V'inken b'chiluki koychos, as the powers become divided, as we said above, when these powers are still included in the nefesh, they're all certainly included in a singularity. Mamish. Lishum hishalkus, without any division. Just like the soul. We have one soul, etc. And how does this work? Well, don't we see that we have separate powers? We have a power of seeing, riyah, b'shmiya, and there's very distinct. Shnei b'chinas shaynis. They're very distinct, zumazu, one from the other. And let's elaborate. We see a number of distinct people at this table. We see a number of distinct people on Facebook Live. We see a ton of different, distinct, 7 billion and growing distinct people in this world. And Tikun Olom would be, I'm fast forwarding, when all of those recognize that they are all part of a singular organism. And as an organism, that means every individual of the 70 billion that are in the world is meant to inter-include each other and bring out the advantage that comes from an organism as opposed to a separate organ.
Every person, you're saying?
Every person. That's what's meant to be. Because every person is a construct of 10, and the 10 in every person organized together. And we're back to chapter Lamed Beis in the Tanya, which we mentioned last week. The root of Ahavas Yisroel is to see that just as we include many different individual powers which act as one, all of the souls come from a singular point. Jewish souls come, and they're articulated in Tanya, from Malchus of Atzilus, which is called the Shekinah. That's that singular point. So we all have that in common. And if you raise it another level, every human being on the planet, the Pasuk says, Av echad lekulam. There's one Father to all of us. So the Tikun, the fix, if you will, is to recognize the arrangement. The Tikun is the Tikun. The fix is to recognize the arrangement that every single human being on the planet has inside of him or her the source from whence he comes, or she comes, and an awareness of that brings everybody together. Another Moshe that's brought out quite a bit in the Olom Morim and Chassidus on Rosh Hashanah. In Rosh Hashanah there's a pasuk, Atem nitzovim chayim kulchem. You're all standing together. The ratios from the heads of your tribes to the hewers of wood. And it's all standing together. It's one structure. And in those Maimorim, all the Rebbeim bring out the point that we're bringing out here, that everybody has a place, different from each other, talents, abilities, like the eye to see versus the ear to hear, but they're meant to interact, utilizing the best of the abilities they have to create a whole which is greater than the sum of its parts. So the fix is the tikkun. In other words, to fix the world, we want it to behave in a way that it has been ordered in the first place, as a tikkun. So we have to become conscious of this. That's what we're driving to. And as we get into the Sikhs of the Rebbe, this will be even, much more down to earth. But that's the general progress.
Like a well-oiled machine where each part does exactly what it's
Exactly,
supposed to
like
do.
a wild, yes, as you said, a well-oiled machine
Well-oiled.
where every part,
Whale-oiled.
every part knows what its business is,
And it sticks to its
and,
business.
and is conscious of its capability and its requirement to interact with every other part.
That seems like such a far stretch.
We'll get there. It's a far stretch, but we'll get there.
Ugh, like
That's
that's
what
gonna
we-
take eternity to get there with
No,
the whole
we're
world.
going to do it fast. We're going to fast speed this into,
Right.
and I don't mean our sheer. I mean, we're going to do something. We're going to make this happen.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
This is part of the engine.
I'm following
This
you.
is the
You'll be
engine
on my
room.
ship.
You're with it, right?
Okay,
You were in the engine room. We're going to make this happen.
all right.
And everybody out there is going to make it happen also.
Amen.
So we're at a point where every part operates together. Everybody, as you said, we don't see this stuff. We see individuals. However many number of us at the table, there's a number. Each one looking quite different from each other at the table. And everyone is different. We're 5 lines up from the bottom.
Okay.
Each one, b'chinas shoyne zu mizu, each one different. Elavada, it's certain, b'shim shehoye b'chinas koichos ela b'nefesh, he's talking that back in the muscle of the body. Since each limb has a certain job to do, but since they're all derived from a singular nefesh, hem b'chinas daka b'ruchnius yaiser, which that single unity is much more refined than the individual parts, le'ein shir, in a way that can't be measured, versus the way they are when they come into the body, when they come out of the soul and become physicalized, the limbs and organs of the body. Which there in the soul, all the organs and limbs of the body are united. As if they're one thing. So think about that. If every person in the world felt that they were part of one thing, mamish, like a well-oiled machine.
A whale-oiled
A
machine.
whale-oiled machine.
With whale oil.
Whale oil used to be pretty big.
Whale.
Moby Dick's.
Whale oil.
Okay. Now, that is Yuvin, and in this manner, that we just talked about the body, will be understood. Hanimshal, what are we comparing this to?
Hashem.
We're comparing this to the Esser spheres of Atzilus,
Mm-hmm.
which are in that state of unification, where though there's Atzilus is an interesting place. Having not been there myself, but having it described
Well,
at length by the
you're
various
from
travelogues, that exist in the Maimorim of Chassidus, it's a place where both separateness and unity coexist. It's like a place where the emergence of separation is happening, but it's happening in such a way that the netzolim, that's what they call them, the emanated beings there, are so refined, and I'm looking at my hand now, the covering on them, the clip, the shell, or the thing that makes them singular, translucent might be a word, might be a good one, is that they're, at the same time that they're aware of themselves, it doesn't interfere with their awareness of being one with God.
Beautiful.
That's the world of Atzilus. Yeah. This is mine?
Yeah, that's your phone.
Being self-aware does it. On the contrary, being self-aware allows you to be more aware of others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if everybody heard that. Self-aware self-aware is the disease. That's the disease that needs fixing. Everybody out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of what we're going to
Sorry, in
go
other
with.
words, you're saying self-aware in a bad kind of
Yeah,
context?
yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
He meant it in a good context.
Oh.
Oh, well, there's two ways to take it. Self-aware is, it's a positive thing. I tell you, I've probably told you this 10 times, this mushal and the visions that Chassid gave me about the days when there were tulipels. Remember the tulipels?
Mhm.
No tulipels? Tulipels in the suit,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
And you had a flower in each lapel. That was what it was designed for, to hold the flower when you went to the wedding or to a formal event, right?
2 flowers.
And 2 flowers. And one flower speaks up and says, and these are both good things to say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam.
Okay.
For my sake, the world is created.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have self-confidence. You have to have power. The other says, these are both Pesukim, Afilu yitush kadmo. Even a fly was created before me.
Right.
Because man was the last thing. And this is the secret.
Button.
Excuse me. Where did it go?
Right behind you.
It's the balancing act.
Yeah.
That's the tikkun, right? If you look at the 10 spheres, it's all about balance. Chesed or tiferes, yesod, take right and left and middle. Middle is where the action. Middle is called emes, the derech emes. One of the things is Yaakov. Yaakov is emes. Tikta emes liYaakov. It's a
Today's
pasuk, right?
Tanya.
Well, I think
Rachel man. It's
Yaakov.
I think
last
what he
2
meant
days.
was when you were just from what you're talking about, what Hananya was saying about being self-aware. If a person only realized that deep within themselves, right?
Yeah.
With all their kayach and
Yeah.
everything from its source, and in
Yeah.
its source it's unified, and a person can identify with their own unification as opposed to them being, let's say, for there be dichotomies inside of them, or for them to have, let's say, what's that congruency in their own life.
Right.
The more you're congruent in your own life, the more you also accept other people.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
the
think that he meant,
positive,
but that's
yes.
what he meant by self-aware. When you're self-aware of yourself and you're,
If
you know,
that's
that
what
way,
you
that
meant by self-aware, of course.
You're saying that the esospheres have a self-awareness, meaning that there's a self-confidence at the same time that doesn't get in the way
Yeah.
of their interaction with the other spheres. Is that what you were saying?
That's correct. That's correct. And that's the state of Atzilus. That's the most rectified world, well-arranged world that we know.
Mhm.
Because both things are happening. There's the self-awareness in a positive way. That's why they're a yesh. They're a something,
Uh-huh.
right? They're not in the cosmic soup, dissolved like
Mhm.
sugar. There's something. And Hashem wants that. He wants us to be something. Yishvilini v'roilim. For my sake, the world is created. But at the very same time, congruency is in a good word. They're aligned with, and meaning very aware that they're part of an organism, and not just separate things on their own.
Which is essentially the way we should be living.
And that's the
leading our
way we
lives.
should be. That's to be masakin oilam, to correct, or we'll put it this way, to arrange our internal world correctly.
It's a high
And-
level. It's a high level of self-awareness. It's that point you're talking about is the same point when you button the two lapels together. When you're
Yeah.
self-aware and you're confident, but also,
Yeah, you realize how nothing.
yeah,
The
like
cube-
you have perspective. You see the forest and the trees.
You have to be.
It's a
Yeah, you have to, exactly, the forest and the trees, that's another way of looking at it. A couple of questions here. When I mentioned this notion of Ahavas Yisroel, which comes from individual people realizing that they're all from one source, that was chapter 32 of the Tanya. Now here, look at Tanya. And the name of the book that we're learning from now is Torah Or. Both written by the same author, the Alter Rebbe, that's Shmuel Zalman. What else? Okay, I think we're okay. So, okay. So, bottom of the page, 2 lines up. Well, that is a Yuvan Hanimshal. Back now. We talked about it in the human body, the human experience. Back to God. He's the analog to the analogy. She'ini Spheres Atzilus, the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Kol bechinas b'kli b'fnei atzmo. Each one is in its own role. Chesed is chesed, Gevurah is chesed, etc., etc. Chochmah is by itself, chesed by itself. Aval b'shorshon, in their root, the bechinas eses aganuzes in the solution before they dropped out and became individualized. Hem b'ili yoser, they're at a much higher state. Ragnailav Ein's case, which is without end higher than when they dropped out. Achasham hem kulam rak davar echad, which in that predecessor state, from which the singularity, which is called the 10 hidden spheres, or there's another level which we call Eses spheres v'kli echad, 10 in one keli. At that predecessor level, that's a level of unity. So kulam everything was one. V'zehu shehein akudim. That's the first level that we talked about. Akudim, the solution, and there everything is one with the source itself.
what's ikud? What's the definition of
Akud is they translate like a bit different. It's a pattern. Okay. So all these are patterns on the
Ein
sheet.
Kuf Daled. That
Akud. Okay, that's a good point. Akud is the same word as akeda.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. So what's that
Mm.
connection?
Bound.
Bound.
right? He tied
So it's
them.
like a solution, like the
Lakud.
sugar in the water.
Bound, so tightly bound that you can't
Bound.
see the different parts at all. Right.
Okay.
But it's a particular appearance of shading on the sheep in the shot in the Chumash, right?
Okay.
These are the sheep of Lavan, and Yaakov does his magic with the sticks, and they come out of Kudim, Nikudim, and Berudim.
Right.
Which level? Let's say Lahavda, but let's compare this to the matrix. Which level is this at?
Well, I don't know the matrix.
You never saw it?
Never.
Really?
Never saw
I
it.
told you we learned it in seminary.
You learned it in
We
seminary?
walked, like, basically,
Remember, when I was in seminary, it was a long time ago.
no, one of our,
If ever.
And I never should
no,
have
we
been
watched
there,
it,
right?
like, basically, one of our rabbis in seminary asked us, whoever saw it, like, and basically everyone had already seen it. They said, because you already saw it, let's go through it and we'll learn it according to Chassidus.
Aha.
That was the angle. And
Okay.
basically, what the idea is that there's this guy named Neo, which also everything has like deep meaning, and which is also one. That he becomes the one. He's like the Messiah,
Right.
whatever. But the idea is that they see beyond what's in the world, and that everything really, like, once he's able to see it,
Right.
like almost like Dvar Hashem, he sees like the numbers in the world. Like he sees everything in like the sequences.
Okay.
So would you say that that's what it is, or is that too still individual? Because
What's he seeing? What level is he seeing? When he looks up and
The
sees...
he
Programming
sees the
behind the
programming
program.
behind
that's,
everything.
that's still not there.
That's the second
No,
level.
because that I can relate to because I programmed computers for many
Right.
years. And programming a computer is very meticulous, right? You're very... If you're the programmer, right, you're the creator, right?
No, I'm saying, remember when the Alter Rebbe was passing?
If you're seeing the numbers,
Okay.
you're not at the source.
Because the numbers
source is
itself
where the
are
numbers,
that translation.
the
It's
numbers
communication.
themselves.
It's a level of
yes,
communication.
numbers communication.
Right, but what? Like, okay, let's do it this
You
way.
have to go further up.
The when the Alter Rebbe was passing away, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think the Reb Shmuel Munkes asked him. He said, "What do you see?"
Right.
And he said, "I see Dvar Hashem running through the rafters."
Devar Hashem is not atzmus.
Okay.
It's speech. It's,
Right. So I'm
it's
saying,
deep.
asking which level it's
Okay, you want to know
at.
which level it is? I'll tell you exactly which level it is.
Is it Berudim?
I
Like
have to
already
go
at that?
up there. I have to think. In fact, it's the level of. Is it of the three?
Yeah. Because there's
Here's the
differentiation.
level. Here's how it's explained in, particularly in Ayin Days. If you're seeing the letters, those are nikudim. Those are points.
Right.
Letters themselves have no intrinsic semantics. They're just points, right? When the letters combine,
Right. Just that.
you're in
Right.
the lower world. You're in brooding, because now there's for a word to have some semantic, letters have to interact with each other.
But that is what we're made up of.
So that's Dibur. That's Dibur.
Already, Dvar.
It's
We're
the
all
Berudim.
Dvar Hashem.
It's Berudim. We're all the Devar Hashem. Everything is Beruah,
Right.
Piv, Kol Tzavon, the breath of his mouth. Everything is created from his speech. Right.
Right.
Halavai, we should walk around with that consciousness. That's all we're trying to do, is develop the consciousness of what's really going on.
Right.
Balance, belonging, and order. I'm reading now. The elements of harmonious unity and oneness. Right. There are many things, but they're balanced. You see the word congruent. There's a congruency between amongst things. There's a sense, this is well expressed, there's a sense of belonging. That I'm a part, but I belong to a whole. Right? Imagine that. If every human being, if a bunch of us in this neighborhood, all different races, felt that, yeah, we're each a part. And you know what? I love this kind of music, and I know you don't go for this kind of music, right? You find this music rocky, so that's the kind of music I like, right? And you like a different music, and I hear it coming out of sweet expressions, and I don't call that music, right? So instead of
It's all
fighting about
noise.
it, viva la difference, okay? Yeah, we have cultures, and we're meant to have cultures, different roots at the lower level. But we all belong. We all belong to the same thing, and we have to learn how to work in harmony, which is the arrangement that God made for everything in the first place.
Right.
Bidyuk.
Now with that, we're going to skip to, if you have it in front of you, the people here do, and again I echo the invite to come to the table whenever you can. Now I'll put it out there. Does anyone want to take on?
What about the birthday boy?
I think we established the precedent, right? Your birthday, the birthday.
Yes.
Is that the rule?
Who's going to
That's
read?
the rule.
Where are we reading from the?
Okay, as I
second
said
line?
earlier, for those of you in here, and I didn't say this, that Esther got explicit instructions from the Rebbe,
Constructions.
the construction, how to build a shear.
How to
And
win
she
friends
does
and
it with
influence people.
sweets and great invitations and
Mhm.
great flyers. And in addition to that, she brought back the Rebbe's heroa that it would be a good idea to have people at the table,
Yes, take it.
you know,
That's
say
amazing.
it.
I have to say that ever since we did that, there's definitely a feeling of being like more than just partaking in a share, but like more than just being part of a share, but actually being like a real part of it. So
Right. We're belonging. We
We're
belong
belo-
to the share.
We
yes,
belong.
we belong to the share.
Vahine,
Yeah.
who's doing it? You,
Mhm.
Hanina?
Yeah.
And you're saying this mic is picking it up, right?
Appreciate it.
Esther?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I could turn it a little bit, but yeah, go ahead. Hanani has a lot.
And I'll
Strong
just pipe
voice.
in if I have something to say, or anybody,
Okay.
or if you need a translation.
Behine,
Behine, and then,
this
uh,
thing?
Behine.
Page 22nd
Okay.
column.
Left column.
Yeah.
Alright.
Behine ba'olam
Yeah, please.
hanikudim, is that what it is?
Go for it.
והנה בערב הנקודם היה שבה
Shviras HaKelim. In the world that's called Nikudim, the world of points, remember there's an all-inclusive blotch, which is like the sugar in the solution. And then there fall out the grains of sugar, each letter, and that's called Shviras HaKelim, because the vessels which were holding it broke apart because of the tremendous power of the energies and the smallness or weakness of the lights.
essentially gilui without symptom. Is that
What does it say?
Gilui
Yeah.
without symptom. A gilui or
Gilui.
a gilui or
Without bittul.
without bittul.
The way that it's expressed is
Yeah.
it says ha'ar merubim va'kelim mo'odim.
Big lights, small vessels.
That's like a aved meruba.
That's Pirkei Avos. That's Pirkei Avos. Okay.
Same thing.
והנה בערב הנקודם היה שבירס הכלים שזה עניין עולם הטויו, which is this is the concept of the world of טויו. והיינו, לפי שהיה רק בבחינת נקודס, כל אחד בחינת בפני עצמו.
Period.
Period.
So this is a pretty good description.
Good job.
This is a pretty good
This is some
description of the
honey.
world we live in.
Right.
The world we live in, which everybody is bifnei atzmoi, everyone's a point out for himself, everyone's in the kuda.
A nukudo could mean a point,
A point.
right? A point.
Point, that's what it means.
Because you were saying before it also means a pattern, right? Or that was
No,
actually
That was the
that's,
other one.
no, the spheros are
Akudim.
patterns.
Like a Keda.
Yeah, akud is a pattern. Akud is a pattern. where
Everyone feels like an individual point. That's
everything
what he's
feels like an isolated point. You ever read
Nikud.
or know the book Flatland?
Mm-mm.
It's an interesting book. Okay, no point
We should
mentioning
make
it
lists.
if it's not relevant to anybody. Okay.
ואחר כך עולם הבירודים הוא עולם התיקון. And after meaning till now that was concerning Olam HaToyu, and the Olam HaBerudim, which I don't know what that means, is the Olam of Tikkun. Shenasa B'chinas Partsuf, and they make faces.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Good. Literally, is they make faces. Let's
Shemuyos
explain
B'chinas
this. Let's explain this
Eskalos.
very, very quickly.
Mm.
The solution state you got, right? Everybody's got
Yes.
that? Anybody
That's
out there didn't
akudim.
get solution state? Akudim, right? Solution
Bound.
state. Everything's there, but nothing is tangible in any way at all. You can't, you look in there, you see water. That's all you see, right? Falls out from the solution, and there is this notion in chemistry, it's called precipitate. You precipitate out the particles.
Right.
If you could cool it down, that's one way in a hot solution. Cool it down, and the stuff drops out. That's that's nikudim. They drop out into points, into pieces.
Precipitate or evaporate?
Precipitate. They fall out. They don't disappear. They
It's so
fall
funny because
out.
when you were using that example of the sugar solution, right?
Mhm.
We used to do that in science class. We
Right.
would leave the water and let it evaporate, and then the sugar
Well,
crystals would form.
Yeah, that's
Water
that's another way of realizing the sugar.
Solutions
But
precipitate. They
Change in temperature, lowering the temperature will also
Instead of
provide.
evaporating. they-
Got it.
evaporate, the water goes.
Right. Okay.
That's what you call precipitation. When the clouds, what
Right,
fall
when
the
the train-
clouds,
train comes
it's all in a state of vapor, and as the climate changes, it becomes drops
In the
out.
weather
That's what I
forecast,
call
30%
precipitation.
chance of precipitation.
Yeah, but you're talking
precipitation.
about a solution.
Right. So out of the solution will precipitate the grains of sugar.
Oh.
Fallout. That's all it means. Fallout.
Okay.
Okay, and that's nikudim. Okay.
Right.
Now these nikudim have to learn that they all really are came from this singular organism, And they have to do the twofold magic that you spoke about earlier, retain their identity, but not in a manner of separate points, in a manner of being inter-included and interactive and interoperable with each other. That's the state which we call brudim, which is another kind of a splotch on a sheep. And that's what we call partsufim, which literally, yes, means faces, but it's understood and considered as structure. And I used this example last time.
Why the long face?
Like a long face. When I look at your or anybody's face, I mean, I'm aware in my mind that you have two. I mean, I'm looking at 2 eyes, a nose, 2 nostrils, but that's not what I see. There's a construct.
Right.
It's called a face.
Right.
So that's a partsuf, where the individual things are totally all present. You can see my eye, but when you look at me, you're looking at my face, the structure.
Which is a contrast to Nekudim, which is literally just like a dot.
Yeah.
Right.
So partsufim is a structure where all the dots present themselves as part of a whole.
It's colorless. It's like they're all one and part of something else.
You're right, exactly.
So it's not, they're not a chachma on its own, rather they are included within all the associates to create the face.
So he's just using Chochmah as an example. Chochmah doesn't stand by itself. Chochmah becomes a part of a construct called the Eser Tikunim, the 10 arrangements. The Eser Tikunim, by the way, Chochmah being a das, Chesed Gvur Tiferes and Yesod Yesod, are arranged. I mean, what structure does that call forth? What's a rank?
The human also.
The human.
You have the head, you have the shoulders.
Right? Chochmah being a das, etc.
Right.
That is the human. An integrated unity of separate kaichos, separate powers. And that's a civilization. An integrated unity of separate people. That's the arrangement that it's supposed to be. You ready? Shelo yiyeh.
Yeah, so it's part of a larger thing which includes the Esther Series.
Right. Just for a second, somebody writes, I didn't receive the answer to the question about which book. This was back earlier when we were talking about love of individuals coming. The book is the Tanya, Tanya, also by the Alter Rebbe. Go ahead.
The Nikra Partsuf Abba, and it's called the face of the father. V'chein Partsuf Zer Anpin, and also the essentially the
structure.
Face,
call it structure.
The structure. So,
the structure.
Yeah, the structure of Zer Anpin, which is the mother.
No,
Abba verse.
No, not the mother. It's the midos.
The midos.
The parts of he's skipping. The parts of Ima would be Bina, and Zah, which is 7, which is the small faces, is the 7 midos. Yeah, that's what he said.
But they are all included one.
Yeah. So when they're a structure, they're all inter-included with each other, together.
Meaning the chachma and the midos.
Chachma and the midos.
Right. That's for spheres.
The avah.
The
brains or the mind, which is called Chachma and Bina, father and mother. Avah, father and mother.
Ava v'ima.
Yeah.
The ava mi'irim behem, like shine out and
into the midos. So here's a simple way of putting this.
Yeah.
The head is influencing the heart.
Correct.
Right? You're not running, you're not this cold intellectual who has no feeling. Neither of you are this hot, passionate person that has no brain. What?
An untamed animal.
An untamed animal. You've got
Ahavas.
an integration going on between heart and mind. Maya shalat al alev. The brain rules over the heart.
Can you say this just from Ikru? Can you just translate that like in your own words? I'm just trying to
I could
understand.
have, sure, if I knew where you were lying. The ikru, what line?
No, it's after parts of Zer Anpin Ikru Bechinas Hamidos Ach Kulan. I just want to
Oh,
understand
we
that.
didn't get there, did he?
we
The
did.
ikru parts of
Right, right.
Afilava became parts of Zah. Yeah, Shikora him Bechinas Mida. Zah. It goes on Zah.
Right.
Zah The main inyan of Zoh is midos.
Okay.
However, kulim miyachad, brain, mind, and heart come together. Zoh, all the midos are included with each other.
Right. The Abba is Chachma Bina and Das. I'm not
Well, he
understanding.
doesn't
which part.
talk about das. Avo is chachma bina. But that's okay. It's just off
That's
the
what
table
I'm not
for the moment.
understanding. Okay.
You have this. All right. You have the head itself has to be wisdom has to reach into and give birth to bina.
Right.
Wisdom is insight. I mean, there's a lot of words for it. We'll call it insight, flash, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
But
point.
the flash is worthless if it can't come into enough sufficient detail that you can do something with it.
Right.
So bina. So Chokhmah and bina have to get, there's an inclusion. Chokhmah is not going to stand alone, nor is bina going to stand alone. Bina is going to benefit from Chokhmah. And guess what? Chokhmah is going to get benefit from bina. You're going to get smarter
Right.
from the fact that you've learned something.
And you'll bring out
Yeah.
different points.
Right. So those two things will integrate with each other. That's Ava. Ava means mother and father. They have a marital union, right? So they're integrated together. That's one group. He doesn't mention that. Another next
Right.
group
It's the
down
midos.
is called Zoh, the
Zoh.
7 meters.
Right.
That's the word necessarily sewed, right? And they form a unit. Not Chesed alone, not Gevor. And now this is something I hope that we're fairly familiar with because we're in the middle of Sfiras HaOmer.
Right.
Every day we're talking about an inter-inclusion
Yeah.
of one meter in another.
What is it tonight? Something of Netzach?
Because the week is
Very-
Netzach,
Oh, that's
It
right.
and
just happened to
if you haven't counted yet,
You just happen to know your own birthdays.
I literally just checked last night.
You didn't know before?
I didn't know.
Wow.
we're in Netzach. And you have the rest
You
of it,
relate to the
Hesed Sheben
parish of
Netzach,
Netzach?
etc., etc.
I don't know.
Now, one more step.
True.
The inter-inclusiveness of the brain powers touches the inter-inclusiveness of the midos powers. So
And then it's
midos becomes mindful. Your
Right.
feelings, you're not just a wild animal. You're just pure midos. Your midos are informed by your mind.
Midos
And your
or-
mind informed it's back.
Midos or-
Does that do it?
Got it. Thank you. That's what I need to
Yeah.
understand.
So that the Ava and Eva Ma'irim Bahem, that the Ava and Eva, the Chochmah and the Bina, the mind faculties, shine into the midos.
Irim Bahem. Oh, that the Meichen shines into the midos.
Into the midos.
Mhm.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Since they open
This- and
they
this
open
is-
that relationship. It's symbiotic,
Yeah.
right? Is that the word?
Yeah, that the scientist doesn't remain in a state of white privilege, assuming he's white. Right?
You would
Which
just
is probably a
assume.
problem in itself. But we'll just use that for
You
example.
assumed he's white.
He
now.
understands or she understands that he or she has a social responsibility to other people to utilize what they have for their benefit. And the other people, I'll just take a random, my electricity went out on Shabbos because of a short circuit in the street. So the electrical worker, well, he's getting paid, but he knows that he has a responsibility to somebody to do a fixing, a tikun, right? That's what we're talking about, tikun, to make a rectification for the benefit of somebody else.
Right.
So, Chochmah
But
doesn't
our
wa-
our payment is
Payment.
Elam Haba.
Right, well, you could make that, yeah, there is an incentive. The incentive, I mean,
Or
not, it
Schar
isn't,
Mitzvah
and it
Mitzvah.
isn't just Olam Haba. Because remember, God doesn't want us, we're not working for Olam Haba.
Right.
In the Jewish religion, we ain't working for the afterlife. We're working for arranging this life properly. And a dwelling place for God in the lower worlds. That's the end game. That's what everybody wants. Right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of smiles. out
Yes, sir.
there. Okay. Now, how does it
A
go?
minute to win it, L'chaim.
How does it Miley Yisera?
Anyway, all that we were just discussing now is Elam HaTikun.
Olamatik, yes, exactly.
And this has an advantage, or it's higher than the Bechin of the Kudim.
Yeah, where they're just points, separate points.
Right. It's not an actual structure.
Right.
Shirak called Bechinas B'fnei Atzmei. And because over there, every bechina, every midah is on itself. Chesed l'ba'adei, gvur l'ba'adei. Chesed for itself, gvur for itself. I will be tikun, but in Olam HaTikun, yesh bechinas iskalulus v'ischavius. There's a inclusion and a connection.
Now this is the first time we've utilized this name Tikun to describe this world. This world is described Olamatikun. There's the Olam of Tohu, which is broken. In the world, that's called Olam HaTohu, confusion and chaos.
Right.
Everybody's out for themselves. This world is called Olam HaTikun because this is the world
We're supposed to
In
reel
which-
it in.
not only it's supposed to be behaving in a fixed way, but where the power has been given to create a reality which is fixed up, meaning a reality where every single person on the planet is conscious of the godliness which is informing them and informing everybody else. Hiskalos. We're all
Interclusion.
into
And his
inclusion.
chavros.
And his
Being a
chavros.
chaver.
And joining together and connected. Tibor. Yeah.
Chavrusa.
Oh wow. We're reading parentheses.
Josh.
Yeah, you may as well. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
No.
K'mayal derech
Okay,
mashal
stop.
chibur ha'isius shenifredu
Oh.
li'es u'mitzraf v'yachal
This will shed
tevis.
some light as to what you're talking about before.
Wait, are you
Okay.
sorry?
In the parentheses.
Oh, okay.
K'mayal derech mashal chibur ha'isius similar like al derech mashal. An example, chibur ha'isius, the connection of letters shenifredu that were once they were separated, but once you put the letters together, li'es mitzraf and yachal tevis. When you put them together, they turn into words.
So the separate letters is Nikudim,
Right.
the word of Torah.
When you put
the
it
word of
together,
Torah.
it becomes
It becomes a
parts
parts
of,
of.
becomes a structure.
What is it? Meets tarfin? How do you say it?
Litztaref, to put to mitztarfin, yeah. To bring together, to gather, to connect.
It's a hashka. You know the expression Hakadosh Baruch Hu mitzvah from the Maisa. You know
Just
when you
hearing
like,
it now.
when machshava taiva Hakadosh
Oh,
Baruch Hu
he
mitzvah from the
connects it
Maisa.
with the
exactly.
good
So
deed.
that
It's in
same, it's the
Tanya.
same word.
Yeah.
Ah, okay,
Right.
fine.
Now, everything's
Shkei.
coming together, but let's realize something. Go ahead, this is an interesting point. Mikol Mokim, nevertheless, it's not like a Kudim. Everything was together in the Kudim also, right?
Right.
So when the Kudim,
Over there, everything was Shayakulan Davar Echad Mamish. Over there was really one thing. It's not like over here where we have different
Right.
entities that come together to create the structure.
God didn't have to create anything if he wanted Davar Echad, because he is Davar Echad. To create, he wants singularity, diversity, multiplicity, but he's designed it in such a way that the multiplicity, to fulfill itself, is to fulfill its awareness of its connection with everything.
So by Akudim, Shayakulan Davar Echad Mamish, it was
Yeah,
really
it's just a
all-
blur. It's just a blur in the Kudim.
It's just a blur.
It's bound up. It's bound together. It's a solution. You look at a sugar water solution. It looks like water, but it's like a
Mhm.
little thicker than that.
Yeah.
Because of sugar, but it's bound up. You can't like pick out the sugar crystals from it. It's
Mhm.
mixed up. It's bound together. Looks like one thing, but really it's sugar and water.
There's an interesting comment here. I mean, a way of expressing that, like the humility of knowing we are not enough. That's a fly was created before me. Meets the pride of knowing that Hashem created us specifically to be in the world together. Through Ahavas Yisroel and connection with God, we forever strive, bringing light to the world.
We're not enough without each other.
We are not what?
We're not enough without each other.
Good. I love it. We are not enough without each other. Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna write that down.
I like
it.
that.
Yeah, I just
Wow.
made that up. Okay.
That's very good.
Lyrics to a new song.
There we go.
There we go.
Esther
There we go.
Freeman. The new album.
Yeah, but you have to give credit to Sarah Klein
Sarah
Ah.
Klein,
for the idea.
We miss you.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay. So the difference between
Sarah Klein.
being a blurb, right?
Yup.
A blob,
A blob.
a blob
The
versus interoperating of things together. Go ahead. So we distinguish between akudim at the top from berudim, where everything's going to be included also. Go ahead. Mashenkim berudim. You have it?
Hashenkim Berudim, Shekol Sfira Yesh Lekeli Bifnei Atzmai. In Berudim, every Sfira has its own vessel.
Sounds like more organized.
Organized. Tikun. It's a tikunim. 10 organizations.
Womp womp. Okay.
Right?
They include within it all Esser spheres.
This
Only
is something we really didn't bring up. And
only
brought it
when
out
they're
twice.
they're in their like compartment is it tikkun.
Right. And what we didn't really bring out, but he's mentioned it twice, we just didn't bring it out yet. That not only is, for instance, is the brain influence and operating on the heart, and vice versa, but each and every sphere contains every other sphere. It's like a it's like a fractal. You know what fractals are?
Yeah, they're very pretty.
You know, that no matter how small you devolve, bring it down, it's got everything in it.
Fractal.
Fractals.
F-R-A-C-T-A-L.
Google it. They're like they end up looking at pretty designs, but it's what is it exactly? It's a mathematical. It's a mathematical
I
equation.
don't know the mathematics.
I think it's a mathematical equation, but you can make pretty designs.
How many
with it.
mivtzas were there?
10.
When?
Right. The Rebbe made 10 mivtzas, right?
Oh, miftzas.
Miftzah.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're connected, each one to
To the spheres.
one of the spheres.
Quite
To think of
possibly.
it. To think of it.
Because if that anything, the idea of the mivtzas were to also rectify the
Sure.
world.
Okay, so in Berudim everything is Niklalalim B'chol Eshisfer. Okay. Nevertheless, Mikol Mokim.
Kol Mokim, al yedei hiskala zu, via this inclusion of all the Esespheres, Meir behen ha'ar elyena ma'arein seif. It shines upon them the higher light from Arein Seif Baruch Hu. Ki Arein Seif Baruch Hu Meir v'nimshach dafke makom sheyesh chibur v'hiskalos. Because Arein Seif specifically is drawn down to places that have connection and inclusion with other.
So this is a principle worth commenting on. Remember, there's this. We're talking about hierarchy, right? The higher is akudim, the solution, and then it comes down and down. But he just said us that at the lower point, where there's, what was your expression?
Which one?
The last thing you wrote down there.
What I wrote down, we are not enough without each other.
Yeah, that there is each of us, but we're not enough without each other. That we need everybody else. Where there's individuality, that's totally aware of its inclusiveness with everything else. That's a higher thing, even though that's at the bottom of the pile. I got a stack of 3, right? Akudim, Berudim, and Akudim, Nikudim, and Berudim. That's at the bottom. But the principle is, and we've had this many times before. It's like everywhere in Chassidus and everywhere in the world. The beginning, where will you find it? The fruition of the beginning in the end. This is God's intention.
Or there's
That
other.
there should be individuals, aber bittul. The Rabbi always uses this expression, yesh aber bittul. There should be a yesh, but the yesh should be bittul. That's kind of what Sarah said. The humility of knowing we're not enough, and the pride of knowing that Hashem creates us to be exactly what we are, each one of us different from each other. Ukamei.
Wait, there's a reason why you underlined it.
What?
There's a reason why you underlined it over here, right?
Why did I underline?
That's
That's the kunz
Yeah.
right there.
That's why I underlined it. That's why I underlined it. Through the hiskalalis, meaning the what happens at the third level, right? At the excuse me, at the level of Berudim, what happens at the third level? That's the hiskalalis. There shines into them, that level, a higher level of the Or Ein Sof than was there at the outset when everything was just in solution. And that's drawn down in the place where there is singularity and community. Chibur v'hiskalos. That might be a good way of talking about individuals in community. Commune. We commune with each other. But there's all
communism.
Huh? Communism. Well,
While we're doing word
that's if you
relations here.
You
What's
could
it
do a
called?
little research. That is a notion behind it. It's twisted, but it's communal affairs.
Let's work together.
Communitism.
You going to go
Is that a
further?
new TV show?
Yeah, I'm going to finish till the end of the parentheses.
Oh, here's a good example of two very different things which are designed to inter-include each other, male and female.
And via this, via Zachar and Nekeva, I will bless them via inclusion, like one needing and being in part with the other. Biram, but what does Biram mean? Zachar and Nekeva Biram?
Borom.
Oh,
He
I
created them. Created them.
Bare, bare, not baram. I'm thinking like
Yeah.
ram, like
Borom.
like
Borom.
great or loud, yeah,
Yeah. Oh.
like loud, like baram kol. Okay.
Kumay b'tzirif asara imrim da divrei shebekdusha the achel bi asara shchinta shirir mashe.
This is like when
by
you come
10 the shchina rests.
10 people together, the Shekhinah rests.
Amashenkim im hayu elu hasara ki im b'fnei atzmai. Nevertheless, each one of these 10 on their own are their own entity. Is that what he's saying?
Well, you're saying it's sort of in line, but what he's saying, which is different if each of them were alone. The Shekhinah wouldn't rest.
The shchina wouldn't rest, right?
Not the way it does. I mean, even it tells us that even one can do it. But there are levels in Shekhinah. So Shekhinah really needs 10. Who wants to take on, if anybody?
So there's just the example right there. It was just the Zachar Nekeva is giving an example of Olam HaTikun and the
Right. And remember, we learned a mimer last year about the creation of man and woman back in Bereshis, and we learned that the original Adam, before the Nekeva was split out from him, was like a kudin. It's like the female and male. There was no distinction.
Back facing each other.
That's not inter-inclusion is after male and female become separate.
Right.
They get back together. That's the third stage, Brudim. But originally they were like a kudin. It wasn't male or female. It was called Adam. It included both.
So it goes Nikudim, Ikudim, Berudim?
The same set. Ikudim, Nikudim, Berudim. Akud, the state where male and female were not distinct from each other. They were embedded in a singular structure called Adam.
Right.
Adam. Split out into two, Nikudim, separate points, back to back, and then running away from each other, and then needing to find their way back to each other, which is Berudim.
Wait, so Akudim.
Akudim is before Eve was split out.
No, Akudim is the solution, and then the next is what, Berudim?
No, Nikudim.
Nikudim.
Yeah.
So
The
there's
complete
solution,
opposite.
and then there are points,
Complete
and then what's the third one?
The third one is Berudim,
Berudim,
where each point becomes a structure, a face.
where it's.
The points are all there. The arm is here. The
Why
leg
wouldn't
is
it
here.
go? Why wouldn't it go Akudim, Berudim, Nikudim?
You don't want to be in Nikudim, right? Nikudim is total separation of each thing from each
Yeah,
other.
but let's say if. Okay, I guess it depends on what your goal is, but I would imagine you want to go from a solution to something more pulled apart to something finally separate on its own, which would be Akudim, Berudim, and Nikudim. You don't want
something
that.
separate on its own. That's not what the Creator
Why not?
wants.
So then, how can it even go from a solution to two separate points and then to a structure?
Because that's a good question. Because in each of the separate points, those
Like
are
if you don't want the points, and how do you even get it from the solution, and then from there make a structure?
the two things. Hashem wants a world, right?
Okay.
And world, by definition, is a place where there is something other than himself. There's an experience of something other than himself.
Okay.
So that means there's a separation.
Okay.
We call it the Tzimtzum. Big separation, right? Tzimtzum creates Nikudim.
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 Okay.
Points. A bunch of collection of things which experience themselves to be individual. He wants that separation.
Right.
And another thing about that, though, remember about the way we described it, the lights, the energies were too powerful for the vessels. So he wants that power. But he wants that power to be present, every individual as powerful as they can be, right? But at the same time to be able to be nullified to each other.
Okay.
So he
So
takes the solution,
Okay.
precipitates out the grains of sugar,
Okay.
and then asks the grains of sugar and gives the grains of sugar
Let's
the
make a
power
cake.
to be as each one of them as beautiful as you can be,
Okay.
but at the same time carry the sense of where you came from.
Like make a cake, right?
Just make it.
And is this
Cake may not be a good example.
Is
because
this
things
what-
lose their identity in the cake.
fine? What exactly?
We'll use this example. Let's make a human organism.
Right.
Where
A man
where
and a
the,
woman.
Where the arm retains its armness, the eye retains its eye-ness,
Okay.
and they both work together in a parsif, in a structure,
Oh,
integrated.
okay.
You know, they started.
The solution would be like the, I think it's called like a zygote or whatever. You know, like when the sperm and the
when
egg
the sperm
meet. That's like a
that's
solution.
another metaphor.
And then
right.
it precipitates out into a
Into a
baby.
baby.
You know, it goes from two cells and they divide and they
Yeah.
divide and divide until you see a little spine and two big eyes and a head and a body. It looks like a little
Chachi.
yeah, whatever. And and then okay, those are the nakudos, those two things, cells coming together.
Mhm.
They're each a solution, let's say, and they come together as two nakudim, and then they make a structure, which is a baby.
Right.
Is this kind of like Seder Stalshalos? Like, what is this exactly? What is he? What is it? What's the Alter Rebbe describing here by talking about this process?
The state of one thing coming out of another
Okay.
is Seder Stalshalos.
Okay. So what
So
is he describing another aspect of Seder
in your
Stalshalos,
example-
or he's boiling it down to these three parts?
The whole of Seder Stalshalos is number one. It's a structure in which diversity manifests itself, and in an orderly way,
Right.
so that they all interact with each other.
Okay.
So one thing descends from the Chokhmah. From Chokhmah is Noiled Bina,
Okay.
right? And Bina gives rise to the Midos, right?
Okay.
In a excuse me, in a process called Ilava Olo, cause and effect.
Right.
One thing comes out of the other, right? But at the same time, they aren't meant to be out of each other. They're meant to be all included in this
They're meant.
structure called Odo, and to take
They're meant to
their-
be parts of.
they're meant to be a parsif. And that parsif is a realization of Seder Stalshalos.
The nakudos would be like people just doing their own thing without
Yeah.
any kind of like.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just gonna do what I want today,
Yeah.
versus like being a productive member of society.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So the structure is an image.
That's how you don't wanna be-
Eser Tikunim, that structure is a structure of Seder Stalshalos.
Right. Like you don't want to be a sphera without like. You don't want to be like a concept without like groundedness, like a sphera, like a place to go, right? Like
Yeah.
like the spheres in the Seder Eitz Chaim diagram, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Sure.
There are businesses that started modeling their structure off of something that's more like interesting than having the structure from the top down.
Amazon is a great example.
Okay, but there's a name for the structure and I forgot what it is. But
Oh.
there's no longer a CEO or like the one person at the top and
Visionary.
it's like everybody putting together their talents and divvying up, but like there's just a different method to it rather than like there's a hierarchy and then
Right.
you know.
Amazon does both. I mean, first of all, and it's because you can't remember, the hierarchical perspective is very important to be retained. There are 10 spheres. God has arranged things in a hierarchy. Chokmah on top and Malchus on the bottom. And that's a hierarchical structure. But at the same time, everybody is a fully realized entity that operates in its own domain
Right.
and has an influence on the other domains, right? So why I say Amazon? Because Amazon clearly is a hierarchical structure. Jeff Bezos is the top of Amazon, and,
Right.
and if you looked at it,
Elon Musk, Jeff
and Elon
Bezos.
Musk, but there is a corporate structure. At the same time, the business model of Amazon
Good and evil.
is a bunch of independent things. You can
Yeah.
you can have your own business, and Amazon just really enables your own business
Right.
by being a platform for it
And they
and
make
giving
money
you
off it.
distribution.
Yeah.
And they charge for it. I mean, that's business. That's okay. But they recognize the independence of each thing in their
Is that your phone?
platform. Probably. Probably.
Okay.
So there's a union of the two. So there's a
Right.
hiskalos, you know,
Right.
that all of the Amazon entities, all the Amazon businesses are nichlal, become part and absorbed in the Amazon platform, which primarily, like I said, gives it access, name recognition, and social media recognition, and gives it distribution
Right.
and delivery, even, right? And at the same time, Amazon retains its hierarchical
Amazon is
structure.
too easy. It's
So
too
that
easy.
business model you're talking about, like totally flat, I'm just not familiar with. So an Amazon model is, to my thinking, hierarchical, but where everything in that world of hierarchy retains a high degree of independence.
It's like a monstrosity, not a it's a
All right, where are we? Anything going on here on the screen here? No, nothing new.
you finished the
You finished the parentheses. Anybody want to carry on?
I'll read. Okay.
The zehu.
Josh, you're coming up to bat soon.
וזהו על ידי שם מה,
Oh.
המאיר בעולם התיקון ששרשו למעלה בבחינס נקודת.
Okay, so we said the bottom of the heap, right? The world of Berudim, the bottom of the heap, where everything came out of being wondrously nothing, right, in solution, into being powerfully independent, and now became powerfully independent and nullified to everything else at the same time, right? That's called Shema. Shema is the name of God, which is articulate. If you spell it out, it's the Yud K Vav K with olives, where you spell an aleph, Yud Aleph, Yud Aleph Dalet, Yud, Vav, Vav Aleph Vav.
Oh, right.
Right? That's the Shema.
I thought it was related to like Kayach Ma.
And the reason it is. And why it's called Ma is because that particular way of spelling the name adds up to 45, which is Ma.
Right, spelling out all
And
the
it
letters.
signifies bittul. I'm powerfully, what did she said it very well. We are rare, the two lapel. I'm powerfully myself, and part of my power is that I can be and am bittul to you and to you. And I'm listening.
Right.
I'm a good listener.
It's also the masculine, right? Ma is masculine.
Ma and Ban.
And the Shema, that bittul, shines into the world of Tikun, and that ability to mavatal yourself, and this is the key, to mavatal yourself and at the same time retain your self-integrity or self-awareness or value is much, much higher than it was at the higher level in Nikudim, which was the higher level where everybody was up for themselves.
Was on by themselves.
Huh?
Yeah, and the level of ikudim without an
Oh, Ikudim, the first level.
ikudim. There's a everybody's on their own.
In Ikudim, there's nothing else. There is no own. There is no anybody.
It's just a mush.
Right.
I find it interesting how when you're younger, like, it's such a different perspective. Like, you look at other people who are like popular or out there, and you're like, oh wow, that's something to be admired and look up to. But then as you get older, you start noticing people who are more bittul, and you're like, wow, that's powerful.
Right.
That stands out. That's amazing. It's like such a paradigm shift. It really is. I was looking when you were talking about being powerful. It's like powerfully humble.
Powerfully
Like
humble. There's
it's
a
like
big
so
paradox,
like
and that's it. Powerfully
it's
humble.
such a power to see humility. You're like, wow, that person is really in control.
Leaves you in admiration.
Really, they have so much more control
Right.
than the people who look on the outside. They look like they're controlling things, but there's so much more control with bittul. Very
because
interesting.
It's much more powerful.
Yeah.
the persona of controlling is masking
Mm-hmm.
a very deep insecurity.
Insecurity. Very interesting. Yeah.
Excellent.
Controlling external,
what's-
external or internal
An
focus of control.
Right.
No,
Saying an external focus of control is that like
masking
insecurity,
internal insecurity.
and an internal control is that bittul,
Oh,
is
the
that
bittul.
strength,
Okay, good,
is
good,
that like
Yep.
What's the Rashi Tevis over here? Daled
This
Aleph
Shema,
Kuf.
the Adam Kadmon,
The Adam Kadmon.
of the primordial man, meaning the structure of man at the original levels.
שהוא בחינת האור הכללי על דרך הנ"ל, על דרך הנ"ל?
הנ"ל.
Okay. והקודם.
Yakudim, that's where it all
Right.
starts, where everything is in one vessel, no distinction.
I'll call it על כן.
Okay,
על כן. על כן ממנו נמשך התיקון שיהיה נעשה אסקללוס בברודים.
Okay, from the fact that everything is initially non-discrete, comes the ability down here in the third level to be both discrete and non-discrete, to be a yesh or an ayin at the
Right.
same time.
והיינו כי שם מה הוא בחינס ביטול מלשון ואנחנו.
V'nachnu ma. This is where it comes
V'nachnu
from in
ma.
the Chumash. It's spoken by Moshe and Aaron. Moshe said, "V'nachnu ma, we are nothing. Who are we?" When God's, giving them, like, you
Bittul.
guys are supposed to be this, he says, "V'nachnu ma, we're nothing."
Wow.
Moshe Rabbeinu says this.
Yeah, I believe, we'll look it up, but it's said The we is Moshe Rabbeinu, and I think it's Moshe speaking. But we can look
Who are we?
yeah, who are we?
וההסקלולוס נמשך מחמס הביטול לאור אין סייף.
So this is the key
Very
phrase that I
insightful.
think the Rebbe has put it so, I mean, to me, like it's a touchstone. Yesh aber bittul. Not just bittul,
Bittul
meaning,
b'yesh.
meaning gama nothing, not just a zero, a drop of sugar in solution. I'm a yesh. Aber bittul. And I'm bittul.
It also, like, just to put it into a practical
Yeah.
aspect, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like when you're younger, right? You feel the need sometimes,
Is
or
that
like when you're
started?
immature, I would say. It's not younger, it's more like immature. A person who's immature feels the need to necessarily or defend themselves when they have a low self-esteem. Somebody insults you, you have to defend yourself.
Right.
As you mature,
You're like,
you
okay.
wait a minute.
Right.
You're like, your words mean, like, it means nothing to me. It's like, not that they're insignificant.
I
It's
can
like,
completely ignore you. You
it's
don't
like,
mean
no,
that.
I don't mean
I
that
know
they're
what you mean.
insignificant. You almost look at them and feel bad for them, not in a pity,
But
not,
they
not
have to
in
say
a,
that.
not in a condescending way. It's almost like, it's so sad that you have to say something like that
Right.
when really you and I are just the same. Like,
It's a
not,
reflection of them.
it's, yeah, you start
It's how they
realizing
feel about
exactly,
themselves.
exactly, and then you feel bad for them, but not
Right.
not in a facetious way. Like, you just
Right.
feel bad, and it's just such a paradigm as you
Right.
mature and you start realizing, like, wait a minute, I am a something, but I'm also, but to be something, you don't have to be out. You don't have to like be gaivadik about it or be out there. There's a humility in knowing who you are.
Sure.
There really is, and it's like that balance is so beautiful when it like
Right.
comes out in such a healthy way.
It also comes a lot from having more self-confidence, I think.
Right.
Via self-confidence, then it's like,
That's
you feel less defensive.
that's right. The more self-confidence, the more bittul
Right.
It's,
you can
right.
be. You can manifest.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's that locus of control. That's
Less
that's
self-confidence, the
internal.
less bittul.
And the Rebbe understood this generation because I remember reading in a. I remember watching a video or something where the Rebbe was talking about the struggles of the previous generation, which was Gaiva, and the struggle of our generation is low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem.
Right.
Exactly.
That is a struggle.
Yeah, it is a struggle. It's a totally struggle. And it manifests, unfortunately, in very,
Yeah.
very negative ways. Okay.
Okay. Should I do one more line and we'll?
Yeah, where are you? You in
ולכן
blank?
על ידי שמה נעשה גם כן אסקלולוס בארעין, what is,
Where are you? Aldera Canal?
no, we're on,
Which
The
line?
inside?
are you
it's
That's
the
a sphere?
inside
Did you turn the
Tikun
page?
Olom. Yeah, I turned the page
Oh.
because I said inside Baruch.
on?
Or
Velachin.
Yeah, I said
Al
ולכן על
yedei
ידי
shema, that's again the scholars, but Esses Spirits of
That's the
Tikun.
spheres, right?
That accomplishes the integration of the 10 spirits of Tikun. And for this minor, we're just going to say this one little piece
Okay,
in brackets down here below.
go for
Anybody
it.
else want to say it?
Levi.
oh, that's you.
We're gonna end
Wait,
up
can
with
I
a
ask one
bang.
question?
We're not
Why
forcing anything.
why does he
Anything
say
else?
specifically the Esser spheres to Tikun? Isn't that not what the whole Bible is about?
This
Are there
word-
other Esser
yes.
spheres that I don't know about that are not Tikun?
Yes,
Like he says
yes,
specifically-
Yes,
Okay.
Esses Spirits Hagamuzos.
Oh, the hidden
Ten-
ones.
Which are in the world of Akudim,
Okay,
right?
got it.
The Esser Spirits of Tikun, and this is why I keep coming back to the word arranged.
Okay,
This is the world where all the spheres are in a visible arrangement,
okay,
as opposed to in solution.
got it.
They're masakin, they're arranged. And when they're disarranged, it's our job and our capability and responsibility to arrange them.
Got it.
That's why this world is called Olam Tikun.
Yes.
All right, Josh. Without further ado, wrapping it up tonight.
Which set of parentheses?
The
Right
Scholars.
The
there.
last brackets here.
Okay.
Viscalulus zu, hu al yedei habitul.
There's the whole point.
Boom.
Bittel,
It's all
aber
you.
nicht, but nicht a gornisht.
Hmm.
Right? I'm bittel, but I'm not, I'm a mat that you can step on. That's not what I mean by bittel. In fact, you could get me angry and I would, you know.
It's like
that
you
I
let
wasn't-
it go.
Yeah, there's a difference in Chassidus. This is so psychological. The difference between that which I just described as being like zero self-worth, and what's what I'm looking for? Shiftless.
What's shiftless?
Shiftless means lowness.
Hmm.
And one of the things that somebody gave me a gift of a small mimer written by Rabbi Isaac Hamler. Isaac Hamler was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, and the Mittler Rebbe, and is entitled I'm waiting for you. Guys out there, we're just having a side conversation.
Sorry, we need
It's called Hashiflis v'Hasimcha. Or maybe vice versa. Hasimcha v'Hashiflis. The way to true joy is this bittul we're talking about.
So we
Yeah.
need to just, sorry, we need to finish just because we
We're going to finish. Well, finish the paragraph. Levi.
V'zehu yesod kol haTorah.
Where
Rios
is it? Oh,
bittul.
you're going to finish it. Okay.
Okay.
This is the foundation of the entire Torah. What?
To be bittul.
Bittul hayesh
You got it.
la'ayin. The nullification of the yesh. You are a yesh, but you're bittul to the ayin.
You're being paged, Esther.
page.
Go ahead.
V'kol ha-shlosha devarim she'alehem ha'olam omeid.
Haynu.
Hainu. Torah, v'avoda, Gimel Iskasadim.
Right. So all three things on which the world stands, which the Mishnah tells us, are Torah and Avodah and Mitzvah.
Kulam,
Kulam.
Yanan, Bittul, Hayesh,
Yes,
Yeah,
Devarim.
go
You
ahead,
want
go
to
ahead.
continue?
You're wrapping it up tonight.
All right.
Keep on trucking.
It's alright. Kulam and Yanan Bittul. Wait, the wrong line.
You're good. You're good.
That's right? No,
Kulam,
okay.
and
Kulam
Yanan.
young bittul.
Bittul Hayesh.
Alright, Bittul Hayesh, lion. Al Yidei HaBittul.
Now, can we stop there and just think about that? The three things that on which the whole world stands, Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasodim, all of them exemplify the union of Bittul Hayesh to the Ayin. Why?
Okay.
How do you figure
Well,
that?
Bittul Nas,
How do you figure
Skalas,
that?
Mash'ain, came between his Yesh, Chul.
Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasodim.
How is that Bittul Hayesh La'ayin?
Right.
Torah is nullifying your intelligence to God's intelligence.
And
Avodah
you
is
know your
null-
question, you had a good question about wearing masks,
Oh yeah.
right? And he asked, how do you make a decision, right?
Not make a decision, but it's like, how do you understand it hashkafically when it's like
what's
we're
the-
told, like Hashem told you to do it, you do it, but at the same time,
Okay.
people are told to wear masks
So,
and they wear them.
When it comes to Torah, this is one of the part of how we had this discussion. When it comes to Torah, when it comes to a human being, you should say maybe the person's stupid
Right.
and he doesn't have enough information.
Right.
It just happens to be in a powerful situation and makes a decree.
Right.
But when it's coming to Hashem, this is coming from the allness of everything, and you mavatal yourself to that. You give yourself over to it. You don't treat it the same way you would about this. What does he know?
Right.
Some people do, though. you know?
Right, but you also said Dina de Machos Sedina. We have
Right.
to
Okay,
think
but
of
that's the
Kiddush
point.
Hashem.
That's the bittul of Torah, that you nullify yourself to God's
You
wisdom.
nullify your intellect to God's wisdom. Avodah is nullifying your heart to God's, your
God's-
emotions to God. And
right.
Gemos Chasadim is it's
And
Chabad
nullify-
Chagas and Nehi. It's
Exactly.
nullifying your
Your deed.
yadayim, your hands, your
That's beautiful.
to
No, I like
to
the way you put it.
action.
The three parts: the head, heart, and action.
And this is the three
Torah,
things that the world
Avodah,
stands
Gemilas
on: is
Chasadim.
bittling your Chabad, your Chagas, and your Nehi.
Beautiful, beautiful. Levi,
Whether
wrap
it's
it up.
Nehim.
Well, with Malchus,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Al Yidei HaBittul Nase HaHisklalulus Mashim Kain Bebechinas Yesh.
Through bittul, you create the inter-inclusiveness, which is meant to be the hallmark of all of creation,
Because you step back and you let it.
Mhm.
and that's the opposite of being full of yourself. So Tikun Olom is this practice, the practice of having sufficient self-awareness, confidence, self-worth, that you're something, and utilizing that for the sake of the whole. And I think we're going to stop, right? I take it we're going to stop.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sorry.
I
'cause-
don't know what I'll figure out what we'll do next week, whether we'll go directly to the Sikhs and Maimon of the Rebbe, down to earth, or we'll have to think about it. All right, good.
That was beautiful.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, next week is the week.
Yeah,
and
next
I'm
week we
not
don't have.
going to be here.
Are we gonna do something for Shavuos?
Could. Oh, I'm going to be away from this.
What?
Where are you going?
I'm going to take
We didn't know. You
I'm
didn't
saying
ask
before-
us.
Yeah. I'm saying
We
before
could do a
Shavuos.
mimer before Shavuos.
Yeah, that's what I
right.
meant. Before Shavuos.
Or about Lag
I
Baimer.
know-
Lag
I-
Baimer
There's
has a
one
lot of
more-
beautiful
We
chassidus
could,
about
okay,
that.
okay.
Well, he's not here
I'm
next
game with
week.
it, but I want to come back to this because
Oh,
Tikun Olom
we're not
is-
done with this. Okay, got
Okay,
it.
we could interrupt you.
No, no, great. I'm happy to.
Yeah, okay.
This is part of Sfira. Is Tikun Olom. It's right before Shavuos. We're doing Sfira Sa'imer.
Okay,
It's fine.
okay,
It's
Lag
perfect.
Baimer is
So
a lot
let's see,
of
what's the
nice
calendar? I know, we'll have to look it up. If I'm not here
Say
next
goodbye
week,
to
we're
everybody.
pretty close to Shavuos.
So
aren't
that
we?
leaves us May 4th. And then May 4th, and then Shavuos
Is when? May what?
is so the 4th and the 11th we'd have time to learn. We'd have two weeks
2 weeks
to
to good
learn.
leadership. So we should learn the
And then
Shavuos Maimon the week
Shavuos-
before.
Shavuos is Sunday night, May 16th.
It makes
Yeah.
sense.
Sunday night, May 16th, and then it ends
So the
Tuesday.
first Tuesday before that is the 11th.
It ends Tuesday, May 18th.
The 11th is
The 11th. The 4th and the 11th is the next opportunity, and we
Okay.
should use those
So
to
we'll,
learn
we'll
for
do a
Shavuos.
Shavuos Maimon. We'll do the one probably closer to Shavuos for the better. Okay, bye everybody. A lot of good stuff out there from Facebook on my side.
Thank you for the call.
Bye bye.